Welcome everyone to the digital fine art printmaking tutorial. An interesting group of questions this week that I guess span two halves, though underlying these quite different topics, gamuts versus scale, physicality versus colorimetric qualities. There is a communality, the distinction between tacit understanding, tacit knowledge, and explicit knowledge about our fine art printmaking, print paths. That is knowledge that is intensely personal, experience-based, versus knowledge that's quite formalized, can be written down, easy to share, and so on. I think that's a helpful distinction to have in the forefront of our thinking, our interaction with these topics today, because they all, in various ways, beg that question as to where we place that emphasis, where we weight different criteria, different impulses in terms of what we are searching for, in terms of what we are undertaking and attempting to create. So let's begin by looking at the topics for today. And noting some other questions have come through since I sent out the reminder email, so we'll tack those other questions on to the end of this discussion. These are the main topics for today, and you can see the first three are to do with aspects of our printmaking and testing our own expectations, needs and desires against. Beginning with the gamut we're working with, and in particular, the question was about Epson's Ultrachrome Pro 10 versus their Ultrachrome Pro 12 ink sets, and it's about that explicit knowledge. It's about understanding before we undertake that experiential engagement, what is the advantage? Not just what might this ink set be designed to do that ink set doesn't do, but above and beyond just gamut volume, are there other benefits, other considerations that might aid and abet what we need to do? And that follows to another telling question, a cost-benefit analysis. Are these additional inks not just needed aesthetically, experientially, but are they worth the increased cost? And all of the other considerations, the increased maintenance and so forth that is involved with increasing ink sets. And still dealing with quite explicit knowledge, but now about what happens when we mount a print behind another surface, like glass or acrylic. And especially given in this workshop, how much emphasis we place on the physicality, the tactility, the presence of not just our image, but how it appears on different papers, these different surfaces, its depth and dimensionality and so forth. So I think this is a very interesting addendum to the things we can know about what it is we're working with, to then work with them to develop that tacit, personal, experience-based, hard to put into words understandings that ultimately is what leads us, in so many cases, to these superior resolved outcomes. After all, don't forget, we're returning the image to the world from which it came as an object in its own right, with its own presence. In a sense, almost as if it has its own agency. Certainly, we invest in it so much of our thoughts, feelings, cares, and concerns. And I'll show you how we do this in practice to heighten and try and preserve as much as possible, as is implied in this third topic, the aesthetic value that is wrought into that beautiful paper. And then something much more to do with that tacit knowledge, personal, hard to put into words, experience of the scale of an image. I'm going to use a case study based on my recent visit to an exhibition here in Melbourne from a public collection that has a triptych of mine in it. And I'll show you some snapshots in the gallery of the presentation, of course. It wasn't hung according to the directions written on the back of those framed prints that have been in that collection for 40 years. But in a sense, it doesn't matter for this example about viewing exhibition prints at scale, whatever that scale happens to be. Of course, we'll need to briefly revisit my emotional theory of print size to establish our point of departure for this topic. But viewing those exhibition prints in studios, galleries, museums, and the like at scale, compared to viewing the same image shrunk down onto a screen, compared to prints that are meters by meters in scale in the physical presentation in a public gallery. And are there other factors that should be considered, should be included in how our images are interacted with, how they are presented? Anyway, I'll use myself as a case study and recent revelations of viewing a work that I hadn't seen for decades, and remembering the creation, the staging, the installation of that work. And I've done that several times in different public museums, galleries, that hopefully you can reflect on and reinvent for yourself your own considerations about such things. So straight away, that's an interesting juxtaposition that will be helpful to investigate, to be really clear about what it is we are looking at when we discuss these different characterizations. Explicit knowledge, things that can be written down, can be annotated numerically and otherwise, and their effect, their implication on that personal experience-based understanding, those things that we rely on as visual artists, those things that are hard to put into words. But boy, when we see that revealed in a resolved, successful execution of our image as a print on a gallery wall, in the pages of a photo book or a zine and so forth, in its home away from home, where it belongs in this world, when we see that, we know it for sure. Again, a really interesting play on words in a sense, but a really interesting juxtaposition of those different ways of knowing things and how we not just adjudicate, but how we weight them in our own prioritizing of the things we do, not just need to do, but end up achieving as we curate our own experience, our own practice in rendering our images as these stunningly beautiful exhibition prints. All right, so that's the setup for today. Looking forward to seeing how we go. And of course, as always, any follow-up questions as a result of my initial presentation, which brings us to our fourth topic. It's about the scale of exhibition prints and encountering them compared to the same image displayed not as a print, but in a different medium. For example, on a screen, and in particular, the experience of large exhibition prints, stunning, beautiful images, resolution, tactility, all of these dimensions of presence, execution, aesthetic value, and so on. What happens when they're shrunk down to the screen of a phone or a tablet? And beyond our emotional theory of print size, of course, which is part of the workshop, what other considerations might I need to be aware of that can influence, support, or deny the priorities that I put on the table, that I invest first, second, and third in the rendering of my thoughts, feelings, ideas, cares, and concerns, and their public presentation as exhibition prints or pages of a photo book, and so on. So why don't I use my own experience as a case study for you to bounce off and think about in relation to what you need to do, what you hope to do, what you're currently doing. And this, of course, includes all of the above that we've gone through, gamut volumes, out of gamut warnings, and also the resolution, DPIs versus PPIs that we'll finish today on. But let's for a moment have a look at these examples from my own life, and I'll talk to them briefly of this concern, how what we do is published, is presented, is interacted with, and therefore is understood, let alone taken by others and put to the service of things that they care about, not just what I care about. So here's a public gallery, and my work's titled So to Live as to Dream comprises 3 images. And though these were made 4 decades ago, the first thing to note is that they are not displayed as designed. And on the back of these prints is an explicit diagram of how these 3 prints are meant to be encountered, meant to be installed. Now, these are film-based captures. They're silver gelatine prints, toned in the darkroom, mounted with my beautiful hand-painted frames that match the matte board and so on. A lot of work and thinking and consideration has gone into them. And the fact that the curator has completely destroyed my intent is a separate issue. We're talking about scale, where these 3 images, 1.2 meters, 50 inches by 50 inches, which was as big as most of the silver gelatine papers that were available back then. So let's go through this. Of course, that's me as a dead man. So to Live as to Dream is the title. And then here's the heart of the installation. Note the glazing. It's not anti-reflection. It's designed to include the reflection of the viewer. It's an interactive display. If I zoom in like this, And this is critical. Not just that this beautiful 1950s Phaidon publication, the depth of that photogravure reproduction is palpable. This loving posthumous portrait of Rembrandt's wife and a hand of my partner and her handwritten letter, my text that she found as a lost letter in this book. I can't read it for the life of me. I have to zoom in like this to be able to read. It was almost summer, and the softness of her hand just out of focus, about to turn the page. But oh my goodness, look at what I've found as a place mark lost in time. But hang on, to be able to read this on an iPhone image, I'm only seeing one picture, not the triptych, designed to occupy 2 meters by 2 meters wall space. So why is this work, even though it was made decades ago, not on our website? Because for me, it's 50% of the image, because this is where the division, so to live is to dream, between death and becoming in the other two portraits, where this unrequited desire, adoration, this belief, but also the absolute fragility and tragedy of losing the most precious things, the most dear to you and your loved ones. But hang on, look at this interactivity. Here I am as the observer in front of my work, which is why this is not museum anti-reflection glazing. You are implicated, and this is critical to the experience. The understanding comes from not just your reading, your viewing, but your interaction, seeing yourself reflected in these portraits, turning those cares and concerns, those thoughts and feelings, those memories, desires, adorations, and loving intent back on your own self, your lack of, your ability to, memories lost, abandoned, or otherwise. And how do I get you reflecting on your screen in front? It just doesn't work the same way. And even in this suboptimal installation, I didn't do it, the curator did it, they own it, it's part of their public collection. It still has worked, even in this particular gallery, just as it worked in the National Gallery all those years ago as well. So if we look at our notes from the workshop on my emotional theory of print size, and these 5 divisions, distinctions that I came to a very long time ago, way back when that triptych was made, and the idea of these 5 scales, the size of the hand, size of the head, and the body, and even beyond our outstretched arms, the panoptic. These distinctions, which I have used over and over again for decades to understand the priority of the scaling of my images as exhibition prints, not on screens, not on phones, not on tablets, as exhibition prints, returning the image to the world from which it came as an object in its own right, with my agency, that inhabits time and space, that continuum, the way we inhabit time and space, can be walked around in the stillness and the solitude and the contemplation. But these descriptions, remember, are initially about what, at least to us, seems to be the first, or the nature of the first response we make to an image of this size versus that size. Remember, when the picture is around the width of our body, we're all different sizes, of course, but when it's around 16 inch or so, like this image, that is where we begin to respond more physically than intellectually, than emotionally, in the first instance, just the first instance. Whereas when something is the size of a hand, the size of a heart, only one person can view it at a time. It's intensely intimate, as a caress, a mark, a glimpse of things that have been or are about to become. Small gestures carrying the emotional weight of our world. Then, of course, when the print's larger than our body, but not our outstretched arms, then it's about us. It's no longer about me, or my intellect, or my emotion. It's about us. It's about the community. And when it's beyond even my outstretched arms, and for me, that's 1.5 meters, 60 or so inches, it's then about the panoptic, the all-knowing, all-seeing, the social contract itself. But as I say, when an image of a heart is placed beside a head and a body within a unified, embracing, in my case, a triptych, that's when the picture becomes really interesting as a picture, irrespective of its subject matter. And of course, I've done this in this triptych, even though it's appallingly incorrectly hung according to my intentions. At least people were able to see it, think about it, and interact with it. The point is, here I've got real hands, I've got real heads, dead and alive, filled with adoration, love, concerns, both distant, past, present, and also right here, right now, finding a forgotten or unknown handwritten letter, long ago placed to mark this moment, just like finding a snapshot of yourself as a place mark in a friend's book in their library that you never knew had ever been taken. And though compromised here, my emotional theory of print size is still at work over and over, and yet the physical size of my hand, the size of the letter, size of a head, size of a letter, is well within those dimensions. Don't you love generative fill? I left my shadow in for the ghostly remembrance of things past. Anyway, that is hopefully of some interest or some use in supporting you and how you think about the scale of your own images. Not just in terms of the utility. This is the size of my photo book that I've contracted to have produced, and this is how I'm scaling those images to work, not just fit, but to work at that scale on that predetermined photo book page. Or I've got a research lab called an art gallery and a studio wall where I can test things at different scales and see how they support or contradict or are indifferent to the cares and concerns I'm trying to embed, render into those evocations, those prints that I'm returning to the world. Now, this also reminds me of how we used to figure this out way back then when I made that triptych decades and decades ago. No data projectors in the studios at that time. And Frederick Sommer was the only artist I knew way back then who actually had the first IBM PC, and all we did was write text and print it out on a deafening dot matrix printer. No, back then with our little Leicas, we would take transparency slides of our prints. We had a copy stand set up like we use today to scan film. Then we'd process the E6 transparencies and put them in a projector. And we love projectors, which were auto-focusing. We had them on our trolley in front of our gallery wall or our studio wall or the wall in the classroom at university. And we'd wheel the trolley with the projector, auto-focusing in this case. We'd walk up to the wall as if it was an exhibition print, backwards and forwards and so on. And that hand theory and all of the other bits and pieces we go over in the workshop in terms of understanding scale in relation to thoughts, feelings, the abstractions on our side of the lens. And lo and behold, then that's it. Let's measure it. This is how we did it back then. And then we'd make, because this was silver gelatine printing in the darkroom, color printing in the darkroom, dye transfer printing, the test print or test strip at that scale, and then we'd pin it to the wall and so on. Of course, today we do exactly the same thing, except we've got that 14-bit projector up in the ceiling in our studio, projecting onto that drop-down cinema screen. It's 3 meters wide with zero gain. And we project our images live on there while we're editing them on our Cintiqs or our Wacoms and so forth at physical scale, where we can zoom in and out. Oh, not with the projector, but in the Photoshops of the world, and then walk up to them, just as we did with little 35mm transparencies projected on the gallery or studio wall. We do exactly the same thing. Thereby, before we even run the first test strip to start to understand how the image functions at scale. Then the materiality takes over. We make those test strips at scale. We pin them to the wall, and you can lay them horizontally and vertically and get a real sense without the whole image being there just in a couple of thin strips of paper. And in other tutorials, I've shown you how we make these test strips out of our images to be efficiently printed. So we don't need to go over that again. But that's how we do it, to then adjudicate the effect of scale, the transmission, not just the symbolism, but the transmission of these things, these inner workings, these aesthetic values. That sadly is so difficult to get across on a screen. But that is the challenge, isn't it? That's where the battle lines for some of us are well and truly drawn in terms of what we choose to present in what way and for what outcome, what effect, what determination. Anyway, I'll leave it there. And hopefully there's something of interest for you. As always, can't thank you enough. And this is our attempt to support your work, the ongoing support for our workshop and consultation participants. Don't be strangers. Look forward to the next encounter and the next set of questions. Take care for now. See ya.